Have you ever wondered why some people seem happy regardless of the circumstances, while others feel trapped in a cycle of stress and negativity? The key lies in what they do. In this special video, I'm going to reveal the 10 things you should stop doing now to be truly happy. It's not about completely changing your life, but rather eliminating those negative habits that are holding you back. And the last one, I promise, will change your perspective forever. Are you ready to discover how to be happier, freer, and live a fuller life? Before we begin, if you find value in these videos, please subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. Let's get started. The first thing you should stop doing is comparing yourself to others. Have you ever felt trapped in an endless race against the world? That feeling that everyone around you seems to have more exciting lives, more fulfilling jobs, or perfect relationships than you? Well, my friend, it's time to get off that train called comparison and board the happiness express. Imagine for a moment that your life is like a unique work of art. Does it make sense to compare a Picasso with a Van Gogh? Of course not. Each is valuable in its own right, and so is your life, incomparable and priceless. But don't worry, you're not the only one who's fallen into this trap. Even the great thinkers of history struggled with this demon of comparison. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "Do not waste time arguing about what a good man should be one." It's as if old Marcus is telling us, hey, stop looking at your neighbor's plate and focus on your own feast. And speaking of feasts, did you know that a recent study from the University of Pennsylvania revealed that excessive use of social media increases depression by 13%? It's like every scroll is a bite of a bitter cake called dissatisfaction. But don't worry, you don't need to throw your phone out the window, although let's admit it, sometimes you feel like it. Comparison is like running on a treadmill. You use up a lot of energy but get nowhere. Can you imagine using all that energy to improve your own life instead of worrying about others? It would be like replacing that treadmill with a real path, where every step brings you closer to your goals. Epictetus, another wise Stoic, said, "The key to happiness is this: do not let your happiness depend on things you cannot control." And let me tell you, my friend, the lives of others are definitely not under your control, so why lose sleep over it? Now I know what you're thinking. Sounds great, but how do I stop comparing myself? Well, here are a few tricks that even the great Seneca would approve of. 1. Practice gratitude. Every day, write down 3 things you're thankful for. It could be something as simple as, "I didn't fall out of bed today," or as profound as, "I have friends who support me." This will help you focus on the good in your life. 2. Detox from social media. No, you don't have to live in a cave. But how about reducing your time on social media to 30 minutes a day? Use that extra time to read a good book or learn to juggle. Hey, you never know when that skill might impress someone. 3. Set personal goals. Instead of trying to keep up with others, why not challenge yourself? Maybe you want to learn a new language or run a marathon. The important thing is that they are your goals, not the ones society imposes on you. 4. Celebrate your achievements. Did you finish that report before the deadline? Great. Managed to do 10 push-ups in a row? You're a star. Don't wait for others to recognize your accomplishments. Be your own #1 fan. Remember, by stopping the comparison, you free your mind to focus on what really matters, your own journey. It's like taking off a backpack full of stones you've been carrying without realizing it. Suddenly you feel lighter, freer, more you. The second thing you definitely need to stop doing is holding on to the need to always be right. Have you ever found yourself defending your point of view with all your might, as if your life depended on it? Don't worry, you're not alone. The need to always be right is like an old friend who visits us at the most inconvenient times. But what if I told you that this need is actually an obstacle to your happiness? Imagine for a moment that you're in a heated discussion with a friend about which is the best movie of all time. You defend your choice to the death, while your friend does the same with theirs. In the end, what do you really gain? Perhaps a temporary victory, but at the cost of tension, frustration, and possibly even a damaged friendship. The Greek philosopher Socrates, known as the father of Western philosophy, had a phrase that revolutionized thinking. "I only know that I know nothing." Sounds contradictory, right? But in reality, it's one of the greatest displays of wisdom. Socrates understood that true intelligence isn't in having all the answers, but in being open to constantly learning. But it's not just ancient philosophers who talk about this. Modern psychology has a lot to say on the matter as well. A fascinating study conducted by Harvard University revealed something surprising. Admitting our mistakes can increase trust in our relationships by as much as 23%. Can you imagine that? It turns out that showing vulnerability and humanity makes us closer and more trustworthy. Now, we're not saying you should become a doormat and give in to everyone. The key is balance. Think of the need to always be right as medieval armor. Yes, it protects you, but it also makes you rigid and, let's be honest, pretty uncomfortable at modern parties. What if, instead of that heavy armor, you put on something lighter and more comfortable? Something that allows you to move freely, adapt to different situations, and most importantly, grow. Imagine the freedom of being able to say, "I don't know," or "maybe I was wrong." It's like taking a weight off your shoulders, don't you think? Psychologist Carl Rogers, a pioneer in humanistic psychology, said, "The only man who behaves sensibly is my tailor. He takes my measurements again every time he sees me, whereas everyone else continues with my old measurements and expects me to fit them." Isn't that great? Rogers reminds us that changing your mind isn't weakness, but a sign of growth and adaptability. So, how can we start letting go of the need to always be right? Here are some practical tips. First, practice active listening. The next time you're in a discussion, instead of thinking about your next argument, try to truly understand what the other person is saying. Second, ask questions instead of making statements. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," try, "Can you explain more about your point of view?" Third, celebrate when you learn something new, even if it contradicts your previous beliefs. Remember, every time you change your mind, you're growing. Lastly, practice the phrase, "I could be wrong." It's amazing how these 4 words can change the tone of a conversation. Psychologist and author Nathaniel Branden once said, "The willingness to admit that one might be wrong is the first step toward growth and self-discovery." And he's right. True strength doesn't lie in never being wrong, but in the ability to learn and grow from our mistakes. 3. Seeking external approval. Have you ever found yourself changing who you are just to fit in? Maybe you laughed at jokes that weren't funny or pretended to be interested in topics that bore you. Don't worry, you're not alone. The constant search for external approval is like trying to fill a bucket with holes. It's never enough, and in the end, it just leaves you exhausted and empty. But what if I told you that true happiness comes from within? It sounds cliché, I know, but hear me out. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Do not seek that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and everything will be fine." In other words, the key to happiness lies in accepting yourself and your reality, not trying to mold it to please others. Imagine for a moment the freedom of living without worrying about what others think of you. Sounds scary? Maybe. Liberating? Absolutely. A fascinating study from the University of Michigan revealed that people who live according to their values are 40% happier. 40%. It's as if by stopping the search for others' approval, you're giving yourself a happiness boost. But how do we get to this point? Psychologist Carol Dweck, known for her work on growth mindset, suggests that our need for approval often stems from a fixed mindset. We believe that our abilities and personality are unchangeable, so we constantly seek external validation. But what if we change that mindset? Philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson perfectly expressed it. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And he was right. Think about the people you admire the most. Are they the ones who change like weather vanes based on others' opinions, or the ones who remain true to themselves? Now, I'm not saying you should become a hermit and completely ignore others. The key is balance. Psychologist Carl Rogers, a pioneer of humanistic psychology, spoke about the importance of unconditional positive regard toward oneself. That is, fully accepting yourself with your virtues and flaws. But how can we start freeing ourselves from the need for external approval? Here are some practical tips. You could start small. The next time you find yourself in a social situation, try expressing your genuine opinion instead of saying what you think others want to hear. Along with this, learn to say no to things that don't align with your values or desires. You might be surprised to find that people appreciate your authenticity more than your conformity. Another thing you can do is spend a few minutes each day reflecting on your personal values. What is truly important to you? Are you living according to those values? It's like doing a regular authenticity checkup. Third, celebrate your achievements. Don't wait for others to congratulate you. Recognize and celebrate your own successes, no matter how small. And also, cultivate self-compassion. Try speaking to yourself the way you would to a good friend. Be kind to yourself. Lastly, surround yourself with people who support you. Seek relationships that encourage you to be yourself, not ones that pressure you to change. Remember, self-acceptance is the first step toward lasting happiness. As Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "Very soon you will have forgotten everything. Very soon, everything will have forgotten you." So, why not live according to your own terms? 4. Worrying about what you can't control. At the beginning of the video, we mentioned that you shouldn't let your happiness depend on others, remember? Well, now let's take it a step further. Imagine for a moment that you could channel all that energy you spend worrying into something productive. Do you dare to find out how? It turns out there is a way to break free from this endless cycle of worry. And no, it doesn't involve moving to a cave in the Himalayas, although let's be honest, sometimes the idea sounds tempting. But before revealing the secret, let's talk about something we all do. Have you spent sleepless nights worrying about the weather, the economy, or others' opinions? If so, you're not alone. In fact, you're in great company. Even the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius struggled with these worries almost 2,000 years ago. In his Meditations, he wrote, "Don't be disturbed. All things follow the nature of the universe." Now here's the interesting part. A fascinating study from the University of Cambridge reveals something that will leave you stunned. 85% of what keeps us up at night never actually happens. It's as if we're wasting energy fighting ghosts. And speaking of wasting energy, do you know what worrying really is? It's like rocking in a rocking chair. It keeps you busy, but gets you nowhere. But all is not lost. In fact, there's a technique that psychologists call scheduled worrying that can reduce anxiety by an astonishing 35%. What does it involve? Basically, instead of worrying all day, you assign a specific time for it. Sounds weird, right? But it works. It's like telling your brain, "Okay, you'll have your drama time. Now leave me alone." The Greek philosopher Epictetus summed it up perfectly. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgment about things. In other words, it's not the situation itself that causes us anxiety, but how we interpret it. So, how about instead of wasting time worrying about things we can't control, we focus on what we can? Imagine all that energy channeled into concrete actions. You could learn a new language, write that book you've always wanted to, or finally teach your dog not to chew on your shoes. Well, maybe the last one is impossible. By stopping worrying about the uncontrollable, not only do you gain peace of mind, but you also gain energy to focus on what really matters. It's like cleaning the windshield of your car. Suddenly, the road ahead looks much clearer. 5. Living in the past or the future. Imagine your life is like a car trip. The past is the rearview mirror, the future is the windshield, and the present, well, that's the road right in front of you. Now, what would happen if you only focused on looking in the rearview mirror or trying to guess what's beyond the horizon? Exactly. You'd end up crashing into a pole, or worse, into reality. The Stoic philosopher Seneca made it clear when he said, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which depends on tomorrow and loses today." And he's not the only one who thought like this. Eckhart Tolle, author of the bestseller The Power of Now, argues that the present is the only reality we have. Everything else is just mental constructions, but it's not all philosophy and self-help books. Science also has something to say about this. A fascinating study from Harvard University revealed that people spend almost half of their time thinking about something other than what they are doing. And guess what? This mental wandering is directly linked to unhappiness. It's as if we had a superpower to sabotage our own happiness. Now, don't feel bad if you constantly find yourself mentally traveling to the past or the future. It's natural. Our brains are programmed to learn from the past and plan for the future. The problem arises when we get stuck in those mental trips and miss the party that's happening right now. Have you noticed that children are masters at living in the present? They don't worry about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. They simply enjoy the moment. Maybe we should take a page from their book, preferably one that's not full of doodles, hehe. But how can we return to that state of presence? The practice of mindfulness is a powerful tool. And no, it's not about sitting in a lotus position and chanting although if that works for you, go ahead. Mindfulness can be as simple as paying attention to your breath for a few minutes a day, or truly savoring your food instead of gulping it down while looking at your phone. The benefits of this practice are surprising. Recent research has shown that mindfulness can significantly reduce stress. Imagine what you could do with all that extra energy you're not spending worrying about the past or the future. Living in the present doesn't mean we should completely ignore the past or the future. It's more about finding a balance, learning from the past without getting stuck in it, planning for the future without obsessing over it, and most importantly, enjoying the journey. So, the next time you find yourself lost in thoughts about the past or anxious about the future, remember, the present is a gift, hence its name in English, present. Don't waste it worrying about things you can't change or that may never happen. Before moving on to the sixth habit, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel with the bell so you don't miss future videos. And if you enjoy this type of content as much as I do, comment, "I love knowledge," along with your age. Let's keep learning together and improving our lives. 6. Seeking happiness in material things. Have you ever thought you'd be happier if you had that new car, that bigger house, or that luxury watch? Get ready to discover why true wealth might be found in places you never imagined. It turns out that searching for happiness in material things is like trying to fill a bottomless pit with buckets of water. No matter how much you pour, it never fills up. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned us about this. Wealth is not having great possessions but having few needs, and it seems that modern science agrees with him. A fascinating study from Cornell University revealed that experiences bring more happiness in the long run than possessions. Who would have thought? It turns out that the trip you've always wanted to take might make you happier than the latest model of smartphone. But let's not just rely on the ancient and the modern. The Dalai Lama, mixing Eastern wisdom with a touch of humor, once said, "Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions." It's as if he's telling us, hey, stop looking for happiness at the mall and start creating it yourself. And speaking of creating things, did you know that practicing gratitude can increase happiness by 25%? That's right. According to recent research, expressing thanks is like having a happiness factory in your brain. Imagine that every time you express gratitude, your brain produces a little bit of joy. You'd be like Tony Stark of happiness. But let's go back to material things for a moment. Seeking happiness in possessions is like trying to quench thirst with salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. And I'm not the only one saying this. Studies confirm it. A team of researchers from the University of Rochester found that people who prioritize material goals are less happy than those who focus on experiences and relationships. Now, imagine for a moment the freedom of not needing things to feel complete and happy. It would be like taking off a backpack full of stones you've been carrying your whole life. Suddenly you feel light, free, and able to enjoy what you already have. Psychologist Martin Seligman, known as the father of positive psychology, suggests that lasting happiness comes from using our personal strengths to serve something bigger than ourselves. In other words, happiness isn't in the new iPhone, but in how you use your skills to make the world a better place. 7. Clinging to perfectionism. Have you ever stopped doing something because you were afraid of not doing it perfectly? Surely you have. We've all fallen into that trap at some point. But what if I told you that imperfection is actually the key to growth and happiness? It sounds contradictory, right? Well, get ready because we're about to challenge everything you thought you knew about perfectionism. Imagine for a moment that you are a famous painter. You're standing in front of a blank canvas, brush in hand, ready to create your masterpiece. But wait, what if you make a mistake? What if the colors don't turn out exactly as you imagined? That voice in your head starts whispering, maybe you shouldn't try, you could ruin it all. This is how perfectionism paralyzes us, becoming the silent thief of our dreams and aspirations. But here's the interesting part. Salvador Dali, one of the most eccentric and successful artists of all time, had something to say about this. Don't be afraid of perfection, you'll never reach it. Boom. Can you imagine if Dali had let the fear of imperfection stop him? We probably would have never seen those melting clocks that defy reality. And it's not just for artists with crazy mustaches. Science has something to say about this too. A study from the University of York revealed that perfectionism is linked to anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. It's as if by seeking to be perfect, we end up perfectly unhappy. What an irony. But all is not lost, friends. There's an escape from this maze of impossible perfection. It's called the practice of good enough. Sounds simple, right? Well, it turns out this approach can increase productivity and personal satisfaction. Imagine that, being happier and more productive, simply by not demanding perfection from yourself. It's like discovering that the key you've been desperately searching for has been in your pocket all along. Now, let's think about the Stoics for a moment. These guys knew a thing or two about life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Perfection of character is this, to live each day as if it were your last, without frenzy, without apathy, without pretension." Notice he didn't say, "Be perfect in everything you do." The emphasis is on living, doing, trying, not on reaching an impossible standard. But how can we apply this in our daily lives? Well, imagine perfectionism is like a horizon. It always seems to be in sight, but never quite reached. Instead of chasing it endlessly, what if we focused on the journey? Every step, every attempt, every failure is actually an opportunity for learning and growth. Think of it this way. If you never allow yourself to make mistakes, how do you expect to learn something new? It's like wanting to be an expert chef without ever burning some rice, or pretending to speak a new language perfectly without making a fool of yourself a few times. Impossible. The freedom that comes with abandoning perfectionism is unparalleled. Suddenly you can try new things without the fear of failure. You can laugh at your mistakes instead of punishing yourself for them. And best of all, you can celebrate your achievements no matter how small, instead of downplaying them for not being perfect. So the next time you find yourself paralyzed by the fear of not doing something perfectly, remember, perfection is like a unicorn. It sounds nice in theory, but no one has ever really seen it. Instead, embrace imperfection. Make it your friend, your teacher, your companion on your adventures. Because at the end of the day, it's our imperfections that make us unique, interesting, and, yes, perfectly human. 8. The habit of judging others. Have you ever found yourself judging someone before knowing their story? Don't worry, you're not alone. We all fall into this trap from time to time. But today, let's explore why stopping the habit of judging others could be the secret key to unlocking deeper relationships and unexpected happiness. Imagine for a moment that you're walking down the street and see someone dressed in a way you think is inappropriate. What's your first thought? Probably something critical. But what if you knew that person had just lost their job and is wearing the only clean clothes they have left? It changes your perspective, right? The famous psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "When I judge, I do not understand." And he was right. Every time we judge, we are building a wall between us and others. It's as if we're looking at the world through a dirty window. It distorts our perception of reality. The wise Wayne Dyer put it brilliantly, "When you judge someone, you don't define them, you define yourself." But don't worry, you're not alone in this struggle. Even great Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius dealt with this issue. In his meditations, he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, think about what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." You'll notice he didn't mention judging in that list. Now, imagine how liberating it would be to accept people just as they are, without labels or prejudices. It would be like taking off sunglasses on a cloudy day. Suddenly, everything looks clearer and brighter. But how can we stop judging? Well, it's like learning to ride a bike. At first you'll fall a few times, but with practice it becomes natural. Here are a few tricks you can try. First, practice empathy. The next time you catch yourself judging someone, try putting yourself in their shoes. How would you feel in their situation? And second, question your judgments. When you find yourself thinking something critical, ask yourself, is this really true? Do I have all the information? The Greek philosopher Epictetus once said, if someone told you that your body didn't belong to you, you'd probably get angry. Yet you easily surrender your mind to anyone who insults you. Interesting, right? When we judge, we're giving control of our mind to others. But don't be discouraged if it's hard at first. Even famous Zen masters like Thich Nhat Hanh have spoken about how challenging it can be to stop judging. He suggested practicing mindfulness as a way to cultivate compassion and reduce judgment. And here's the best part. Practicing empathy can reduce interpersonal conflicts by 50%, according to psychologists. Imagine how much more peaceful and enjoyable your life could be with half the conflicts you have now. So, the next time you're about to judge someone, remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Maybe that driver who cut you off just received bad news. Maybe that person who seems grumpy in the supermarket line is dealing with a chronic illness. 9. Postponing your happiness. Imagine for a moment that you had a magic button that could activate your happiness instantly. Would you press it now or wait for the perfect moment? Easy, right? Many of us fall into the trap of postponing our happiness, as if it were a treasure that we can only unearth once we reach certain achievements or goals. It's like saving your best clothes for a special occasion that never arrives. Sound familiar? But here's the twist. Happiness is not a destination. It's a journey that starts right now. It's like learning to ride a bike. You don't wait to be an expert to enjoy the ride, right? The ancient Stoics, those wise, bearded men from ancient Greece and Rome, talked about this. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote something we could translate as, "Do not wait for the perfect moment. Take this moment and make it perfect." Imagine a Roman emperor saying this while dealing with barbarian invasions and plagues. If he could find happiness in the chaos, what's stopping us? Now, what would happen if you decided to be happy right now without conditions or excuses? It would be like giving a 180-degree turn to your life. Experts say that practicing finding joy in the little things can increase your overall well-being by 40%. It's as if every small moment of happiness were an investment in your emotional bank account. But how can we put this into practice? Here are some ideas. The gratitude game. Before going to bed, write down 3 things you're grateful for. It could be something as simple as, "Today I didn't trip over my own feet." The as-if technique. Act as if you were already happy. Smile more, even when you don't feel like it. It's like tickling your brain so it releases endorphins. The instant happiness challenge. Every day, find a reason to be happy in the first 5 minutes after you wake up. It could be the smell of coffee or the song of a bird. The perfect now practice. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, make this moment perfect. Are you standing in line at the supermarket? Perfect. Time to practice your mindful breathing. The 10th and final thing you should stop doing is ignoring what you know you must do. Have you ever found yourself procrastinating an important task only to feel guilty afterward? Imagine your life as a garden. Every action you take is like planting a seed. When you achieve your goals, no matter how small, you're watering those seeds. Slowly, your garden blossoms, and with it, your confidence and happiness. But when we delay what we know we should do, it's like letting weeds take over our garden. Procrastination is like a silent thief that steals our happiness. Every time we put something off, our self-esteem takes a small hit. It's like breaking a promise we made to ourselves. And trust me, I know from personal experience, there are times when I struggle to make these videos, even though I love doing them. The work involved can be overwhelming, and sometimes I let it slide. But that feeling of unproductivity is like a weight in my stomach. So how can we overcome this tendency to procrastinate? Well, we could take a page from the book of the ancient Stoics. These philosophers believed in the importance of disciplined action. Imagine you're a Roman gladiator stepping into the arena. You can't put off the fight, right? You have to face it here and now. One technique you can try is the 2-minute rule. If a task will take less than 2 minutes, do it right away. It's like warming up before a workout, it gets you moving. Another strategy is to break large tasks into smaller steps. If you have to write a report, don't think about the entire report. Focus on writing the first paragraph. Now let's talk about guilt. Often when we don't do what we should, we mentally punish ourselves, but that only makes things worse. Instead, try to be compassionate with yourself. Recognize that we all struggle with this sometimes. The next time you find yourself procrastinating, instead of criticizing yourself, ask, what do I need right now to move forward? One trick that's helped me is Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. When you feel like you're about to procrastinate, count backward from 5 and then take action. It's like giving yourself a little mental push. It's also important to celebrate your victories, no matter how small. Every time you complete a task, take a moment to acknowledge it. You could keep a success journal where you write down everything you accomplish each day. You'll be surprised at how much you can achieve when you focus on progress. Remember, the key is not perfection. It's not about never procrastinating. It's about building the habit of action. Every time you choose to act instead of procrastinate, you're strengthening your willpower muscle. These 10 things we've explored together are not just simple tricks. They are master keys to unlock the door to your inner well-being. Have you realized that true happiness isn't in changing the world around you, but in transforming how you perceive it? I challenge you. Choose one of these points and put it into practice for a week. Yes, just 1 week. Observe how your life begins to change, how the colors become brighter and the smiles more frequent. You may be surprised to discover that this small daily action is like planting a seed of happiness that grows day by day. Remember, happiness is not a distant goal. It's not that oasis in the desert that always seems out of reach. Happiness is the path itself. Every step you take, every breath you take. And that path, my friend, begins right now, with your decision to be happy. Don't wait for the circumstances to be perfect. Don't wait until everything is resolved. Happiness is here, waiting for you to embrace it. So what do you say? Are you ready to take the first step on this path to happiness? The choice is yours, and the moment is now. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "Life is wonderful," so I'll know who the victorious ones are that made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this in the future. Share this video with anyone who might find it useful, and click the link in the pinned comment to get my new ebook, where you'll find all the wisdom and practical advice you need to transform your life. Now I recommend watching one of these 2 videos so you can continue learning about Stoicism and human psychology. A big hug and see you next time.